Well, welcome back, some of you, and welcome new folk to Y Exchange. I'm Alex, and today I'll be your chat moderator. As some of you know, or all of you know, maybe, we're really excited to present multimedia artist Haein Kang and composer and mathematician Carmine Cella. And so, thank you for being here today. We're going to have this live discussion as well as a Q&A today for everyone to really engage in the work and ask their questions. Please note that Y Exchange is recorded. So if that makes you feel uncomfortable or anything, feel free to turn off your camera or let me know in the chat and I can take you out in the recording. So today we'll have both presentations back to back. Each presentation will be 25 minutes long, and at the very end, we'll have a 30-minute Q&A. So I encourage everybody here to think about questions that will address both artists or one at a time. We do really like to encourage sort of the crossover of ideas and see where the questions can overlap. So as we're watching the presentations in speaker view, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. And then at the very end, I'll call on you and you can ask those questions during the Q&A section. Lastly, Y Exchange is a co-presented event, co-presented by Kinetech Arts, the Jurassic Residence Artist Program, and ODC Theater. And we're really excited to have our partners here as well. I will say a little bit about Kinetech Arts. Kinetech Arts has been putting this event since 2014, and it's been featuring artists from all over the world. And it's been really fun to get to see all the different types of work being done across art, science, and technology. Wei here is, he's seen probably like people from every walk of life over the years. So bringing it in the online format has been really, honestly, an honor because we can include people from all around the globe. So that's a little bit about Kinetech Arts. We do weekly meetings. We do this event every month at the last Wednesday of the month. So stay tuned for our next one in April. And we also do weekly meetups across art and science and technology through our open lab on Wednesday nights. If you have any thoughts or questions about that, feel free to look at kinetecharts.org and I'll put that in the chat as well. All right, I'm gonna pass this on to our partners at Jurassic Residence Artist Program, Alexander, to say a little bit about,
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. It's wonderful to see everyone, and I'm really excited to be here and to get to see these presentations. My name is Alexander Gerasi, and I am on the board of trustees of the Jurassic Resident Artist Program that was established a little over 40 years ago in memory of my aunt, Pamela, who was an artist living out on a cattle ranch in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And in 1978, she committed suicide. And in her memory, this cattle ranch was converted into what is now the Jurassic Resident Artists Program. It is 583 acres up in the Santa Cruz Mountains off of Skyline Boulevard. And for 40 years, we have been welcoming artists to come for approximately month-long residencies of all different disciplines. And starting about 10 years ago, we partnered with the Leonardo Journal of Arts and Sciences, some of you may be familiar with, and others, to really bring science and cutting-edge scientists in conversation and in co-residency with artists who use scientific methods as part of their practice. So you can tell why I'm excited about this. And after 2 years of a pause in our core residency program, thanks to COVID, back in January, we restarted the residency program using with the artists who have had their residencies delayed for these 2 years. So Haein is one of these artists who has been waiting and showing enormous fortitude through this period. And we are just thrilled to have residents back. And Wei is here, and there are other alumni here who know what that experience can be like. So we're thrilled to share that in person on the mountain, and really proud to remain connected with artist alumni who have been a part of the program and did amazing things before they came, do amazing things after they leave, and events and ongoing conversations like these at which Jurassic alumni often participate is completely wonderful and amazingly satisfying to see. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Alexander. All right, well, without further ado, we're going to have our first presenter, and I'm going to pass it on to Wei to introduce our first speaker tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Carmine Cella. Well, we everybody talk about like music and the math are closely connected, right? But today we finally gonna hear somebody who is both musician and mathematicians to talk about music. So it's really exciting. I know I've been looking at the Carmine's work for a while. Some amazing work he's been doing. So I'm gonna read a little bit about his bio, and hopefully the police of Italian pronunciation will not capture me and put me in jail. Okay. Carmine Cella is an international renowned composer and advanced study in applied mathematics. He's an assistant professor in music and technology at CMAT, UC Berkeley. CMAT is a Center for New Music and what's acoustic technology, something like that?
Audio technologies.
Audio technologies. Yeah, has done from CMAT a lot of amazing things come out, like things like OSC, which is a common protocol for transporting digital signals, audio signals over the network. As it's very a lot of amazing work come out from there. So Carmine started at the Conservatory of Music in Rossini in Italy, getting diplomas in piano, computer music, and composition, and then studied composition with Azil
Corgi.
Corgi, thank you, in Academia Sicilia in Rome. He also studied philosophy and mathematics. Wow, so you're really a doctor of philosophy. You're the true doctor of philosophy. And got a PhD in mathematical logic at the University of Bologna, working on symbolic representation of music. So welcome, Carmine. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ray. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Alex, for organizing and moderating this forum. I'm really excited to be here, and I'd like to share some of my experiences in this kind of hybrid field, between mathematics, computer science, and music creation. So I guess I figure I would like to use maybe a few slides to present some of this work, and eventually talk about two projects, and as examples of what I do. So without further ado, let me share my screen. I want to use a presentation. I think it's the easiest way to do. Okay. Okay. Can you please tell me if you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So the title of this presentation is "Thinking in Sounds." So my question is, can we think in sounds? And let me try to elaborate on this question. So, but first, I'd like to also share some info and history about me. Okay, so as you can tell from my accent, I'm Italian. So I was born in Italy, where I guess I started learning two things: cooking and composing music, right? So it's kind of a important tradition for my family. My grandmother and my mother are really good cooks, and so I started being interested in cooking, and in fact, and I realized pretty soon that is somehow very close to composing music in a sense. So you have ingredients and you put them together to make something that is good, right? Then I eventually moved to France, and in France I understood mathematics. I studied mathematics. I had important experiences where you see this kind of a metaphor, food metaphor. This food is like organized, it has a structure, right? So while spaghetti is like more open, so to speak. But it was a very important moment for me, where finally I actually put together composition and mathematics. I was in this institute called IRCAM, that is the Institute for Research on Acoustic and Music. And in this place, there are people that are usually interested in both things, like in mathematics and in music. And so I finally found some sort of space for my own research. And then after a couple of years, like more than 10 years at IRCAM, I moved finally to the US, where you have a structured and organized and rich situation in which you put everything together, basically. And now I would say that in the US, the major component is technology. And so I would say that if the question is a musical question, then the answer is a mathematical answer, but then the implementation is a technological implementation. So we use like code, we use signals, we use machine learning to kind of provide answers to some sort of musical questions. I hope I'll be more clear in a few minutes, so I will give you examples of what I mean with this kind of introduction. So, as I mentioned, so I am somehow in between music, mathematics, and what I would call today creative computing. Creative computing is a kind of an emerging field in which, it's a blend of a number of, disciplines, including computer science, machine learning, signal processing, and many others. So, basically, the point is that when we use computer to be creative or to help creative people, or can we have creative computers or something like that? So these are all questions that belong to this type of research. So I guess more technically, yes, just let me show one word about the place where I am now. I am at CENMAT, so the Center for New Music and Audio Technology at the University of California in Berkeley. Place is a very known, and as Wei mentioned, there are a number of inventions came out from this place that are widely used now in every country. And basically, it's a very diverse community that include people with different profiles. So we have musicians, mathematicians, programmers, engineers, psychologists, historians, and so on. So it's a very nice place to be because there is a lot of research going on, and this research is pretty unique, pretty hybrid, pretty diverse, so to speak. So please come over and visit us because it's a very interesting place to see. So my own research, I think you now get a sense, is in between music composition. So I'm interested in composing music. And when I say that, I mean music with instruments, like, orchestra, for example. And then I'm interested in finding mathematical models for music and sound in general. And eventually I'm interested in how can we can use machine learning to, create a unique connection between music and mathematics. So this kind of domain or hybrid domain is my own space, and these three things, even if not more, are interacting, and they are in a sort of feedback between them, and so there is an interesting evolution that is somehow a co-evolution of all these fields. So that's where where my research sits and where I operate usually during my work. Okay, so I guess what is the most important question in my area? in my research field is, can we model the mental process that an artist has during the creative process? So can we find a mathematical model or a computational model that helps or supports or fosters this mental model? So in other words, can Picasso think in shapes, or can a composer think in sounds, right? Um,
Look like we lost signal from Carmine.
We'll give him a little moment.
Yeah.
I compose, I basically have these kind of concepts that are sounds.
Carmine,
Yes, yes.
Your signal dropped for about a minute. Could you go back a little bit?
Sure. Well, can you tell me where?
We were the posting question. Can painter thinking in shape, and can musician composer thinking in sound?
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So basically, this slide here, right? Wait.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So,
Yes.
so I was just saying, this is an important question. So, can we understand how an artist thinks during the creative process, and can we use mathematics or computational models to support or help this process, this mental model? In other words, can we use mathematics to help being creative? Of course. So this means, like, can an artist like Picasso think in shapes, or can a composer think in sounds? And I was saying just a few seconds ago that basically this question stems from my own experience, because I do think in sounds. So I believe that when I model a concept, for me the concept is a sound, it's not an image. And this is true since I've been doing that since when I was a kid, and even today when I compose, I basically connect sounds that are in my mind. Okay, so basically this is basically the question. So let's see how I approach this question. Let me start with an example. As Wei mentioned, I am basically a composer, so my main interest is still music. So let me give you a musical example in this case. So we'll play two things, okay? I will play two, small music passages. So let's play the first one. This is a fugue by Bach, and it's a very known piece played at the piano. So let's play this sound. Okay, so in this simple example, we have I don't know if I don't know how much you know this music, but in principle there is a very clear structure. There is a very organized language that uses a number of elements that are pretty well formalized. Let me play a second example. Sorry. So this is another piece by another composer. The composer his name is Gheorghe Ligeti, and the piece is for large orchestra, and the piece is called Atmosphere. So let's play like few seconds of this piece. Okay, so in this second example, I don't know what you think. I mean, I don't know if you know this type of music. So this piece is a piece from the 50s, basically 1950s, and for orchestra. So in my opinion, these two examples are pretty different, right? So they sound quite different. Let's see how. So in the first example, I would say there is a sort of complexity that I would call relational complexity. So let me explain why. So this whole fugue is based on a kind of a sequence of notes called the theme or the subject of the fugue. And then in this passage that we just I just played, something very interesting happens. So while you hear to the subject, you also hear to a dilated version of the subject that is superposed to it. So in other words, Bach was able to find a sequence of notes that could be played on itself at a different speed, like at different time scales. That's quite amazing already as a result. But it's not enough. In fact, at the same time, you see an inverted version of the same sequence of notes. So when I say inverted, I mean that when we have a note, so like an interval that goes down, the inversion is the same interval that goes up. So now we see how complex this situation is. Like Bach designed a sequence of notes that was capable to be played over itself at different time scales and with different let's say transformations applied. That's kind of amazing kind of type of complexity, right? And it's very structured, very controlled. And this is all about numbers in a way, like quantities, and how we can organize a musical discourse by manipulating the values, the quantities of this type of language. So you see that there's a hierarchy of things, like the subject is more important than the other, versions of the subject. The original version is more important, and it's also on multiple time scales. So it's a very complex, multi-scale, hierarchical relationship model. The other piece is very different. I would say that the complexity now is more an acoustic type of complexity. Like instead of having melodies, we have like some streams of sounds, like very dense streams of sounds. And instead of rhythm, we have density. Like in the short passage we played, we had a moment which it was very dense, very very rich, with all the orchestra was playing, and another moment it was like more sparse, so to speak, with less instrument playing at the same time. And finally, chords became somehow textures. Like we didn't have a concept like the C major or F minor chord, but we're more a texture, like a rough texture or something like that. So in this case, I would say that the symbolic rules that we saw in the previous examples, like how we manipulate quantities, like intervals, became perceptual rules. Like how can we deal with perception and design sounds that actually engage with a different level, a perceptual level, like at the level of density or texture or stream. In other words, it's a very different model. It's a very different thinking behind these two pieces. You may think that in the Bach's example, the main object of the mental model was not about the sound, but was more about the quantities, the notes, the pitches, the melodies. And on the other hand, in the Ligeti's piece, the model was about, the mental model was about sounds or textures. And this may be true indeed, but to some extent, both pieces are music. So in both pieces, the final outcome and the final object is a sound. So Bach knew that he was composing sound. So in any way, so both composers maybe had a model that was based on sound, but in a very different way. So let's say that my interest is, can we connect these two worlds of symbols and quantities to the world of perception, of timbres and qualities of sound somehow? And that's basically what I tried to do in the last few years. So I'd like now to proceed and give you two examples on how I tried to connect these low-level world of sounds and timbres that is more related to perception to the high-level world of symbols and quantities that is more related to thinking in a way. But I don't know what I mean here, because I guess that they are connected and they are somehow the same. They are two kind of sides of the same coin, so to speak. So nonetheless, I will try to give you two examples of my work that are about this type of connection between the symbols and the sounds. So the first example is based on a research that I did. I started in 2016, and I basically took over a project that was created in 2003 in France at Haein Kang called computer-assisted orchestration. So the idea behind this project is something like that. Suppose you have a sound, like a real sound, like a recording of a dog or a recording of a bird, whatever, a real physical sound in a timbre, so to speak. Now, suppose that you want to find the orchestral equivalent of such a sound. Like, in other words, can we find a score that made of instruments such as like flute, trombone, violin, pianos, and that when we play the score, we obtain a sound that is perceptibly close to the target sound, to the sound that we want to reconstruct using the orchestral instruments. So in other words, can we make the orchestra speak or sing? It was an interesting question, and so it's a very complicated problem from a scientific standpoint. Is indeed a combinatorial problem defined on timbre. And I cannot go into details here, so I'll be happy to answer your question later on and give you references. But basically, it's an optimization process from a mathematical standpoint under constraints. That's what we need to solve in order to solve the orchestration problem. And I proposed a couple of solutions, and I developed a software called Orchidea, or Orchidea, orchestration idea, that is being used now by a number of composers across the world, and is used in a number of schools, including Berkeley, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and in Europe at Haein Kang or in Geneva, for teaching orchestration. So it's a kind of an important piece of software for helping a student to get a sense of what the orchestra could do without really having the orchestra in front of them, right? So it's kind of a difficult thing to have, as a composer, to have the chance to write for orchestra. So this tool actually helps in this sense. But I also use that. So before I continue, let me give you a quick demo of what this means. So we will see now a sequence of sounds and the equivalent orchestration. Okay, these are just simple examples that mostly for fun. But let's see. So that's the target sound. And that's the orchestration. The target sound and the orchestration. Okay, so that's kind of fun, right? So it's strange. Of course, this is just kind of an exaggeration. So I don't think this is interesting from a musical standpoint, but it's just to illustrate the potential of such a tool. So basically, what happens then is that you can use this tool to compose music for orchestra. So you basically select sounds, you compose the sound. So again, you think in sounds. And then you find a symbolic equivalent of such sounds using the orchestra via Orchidea. So you basically determine a score that, if played, would generate a sound that is close to the sound you selected in the first place. I hope the process is clear enough. I can give you more information, more example if you want, but just let me continue. I used myself Orchidea for my own work, so I'd like to present a quick example of this. So this piece called Stade d'ombre, Stade de lumière is a piece for large ensemble that I composed in 2018. It's been premiered in France. And what you see here is like a sketch like a mental sketch of the piece. So basically, this is the score before I would write the score, right? So you see that this piece is divided into sections. So these vertical lines delimit the sections, and you see that in these red boxes you see some sort of words. These words correspond to physical recordings of sounds that I wanted to use as target for this piece. For example, you see these drops. This is the sound that you just listened to, right? So these kind of water drops. And you see this mental image here, this drawing here, like, this kind of, drops, I would call them, or like lines, horizontal lines, static lines, or this kind of, vertical lines or something like that. And then what you see on the left is the real piece. Like after I composed the score and after the score has been played and recorded, that's what the recording looks like. So you see that the shape of the real timbre of the sound is very close to the mental image I had before composing the piece, right? So it's like this kind of horizontal lines that corresponds to this type of section. So I just wanted to show you this example to kind of make my case, so that my case being that we may actually find a mathematical model that helps creating music or composing music. So the idea is to connect this kind of physical world of sounds to the mental world of abstraction or concepts, or I would also say sounds, but in a kind of a very abstract way. Before I continue, let me play just a very small part of this piece. So I will play three things here. I will play one of the target sound, that is the recording of a bell that I used in the first section of the piece. Then a solution that is generated by Orchidea, so like an orchestration provided by Orchidea, and then the real thing, the real orchestration of the piece. You will notice that the piece is actually much more complex because I applied some sort of other musical processes on the solutions generated by Orchidea. So it's not straightforward. It's not a tool that composes for you, but it's a tool that helps or assists your creative process. So let's see how these three layers actually work. So this is the bell, so the sound that I used as a target, and then the solution would be this. So this sound is similar in a timbre sense, if you see what I mean. It's not exact, is not perfect, but is a possible, orchestration of this sound. Orchidea provides a number of solutions, like hundreds of solutions. So you need then to browse these kind of solution spaces, find the one you like, the one you like best. So this is something that somehow I decided to use for these orchestrations. So now let me switch to another software that I want to use for playing the real recording. It's just a few seconds, but I prefer to use the software to do that. And I hope it works. Let me check 1 second the audio devices. Yes, it should be fine. Okay, now I play the real recording, like just 1 minute or something of the real recording. Okay.
I don't think we're hearing it, Carmine.
You're not even. You have no sounds?
Is that you typing? Sorry.
Okay. So I understand you have no sounds, right?
Yeah, I don't think we got it.
Okay. Let me see if I can fix it quickly. Okay. But I just wanted to give you a quick example. Well, it should be okay. I don't see why it doesn't work. Should I try again once more?
Did you share computer sound?
Yeah, I did. Let me see why it doesn't work. Okay. Once more. Okay. Sure. Let me share once more. Okay. Do you get a sound here?
No.
Okay. Never mind. I'll skip this example. Okay. So, nonetheless, this is an example of how I myself use this tool to eventually compose and create new music. I would like to conclude my talk by presenting another project. This project is, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So basically, is not new music, but is new instruments. So can we use technology and eventually machine learning to create a new instrument that is interactive, that changes the way it behaves when you play it, depending on some conditions? Okay, so that's the origin of a project called Les Espaces Physiques, so the physical spaces, in which I designed this idea that I call the instrumental inversion. Basically, what I do is that I project some sound inside the body of an instrument, and I put the instruments out around the audience, or I would say outside the audience. So, in other words, the audience is inside an instrument, is embedded in an instrument that is globally played by all the players together. I'll show you a kind of a quick video of these to give you a sense of what this means. But it's a very unique experience. So basically, you go to the concert, and there are no loudspeakers, but it's just physical instruments. But you hear sounds that are impossible to have with real instruments, just because we augment them, and then we create a kind of a incredible physical interaction between the instruments that create new sounds that are unique. And actually, to really understand this phenomenon, you need to be in the place. You need to be in the venue where the concert happens, because you cannot really understand what this means just watching a video on YouTube or something like that. But nonetheless, let me give you a sense of what's going on. So suppose we have an object of the physical world that we augment with a sensor. Then we have a process that captures the sensor information and then manipulates it in a way so that we can generate some sort of sounds that I call audio-driven physical inspired synthesis. And this sound is played back in the instrument itself. So it's played back on the body of the instrument using an object called the actuator that is kind of a small object that vibrates. And so basically you inject some vibrations into the body of an instrument. What happens in between the sensors and the actuators is that there is some sort of machine learning that learns what are the gestures that you are doing on the instrument, and then takes decisions about what to do with these gestures and which type of sounds and waves you want to inject back into the instrument. So I had a number of pieces. This Les Espaces Physiques is made by a sequence of pieces. The first one was a piece played in Paris in 2017. You see here how the instruments are on the audience, and how large percussions have been augmented using this sensor that you see here in this small fraction. But I will show an image that is more clear later on. And this was the first example of a global instrument around the audience. It was a kind of a unique experience. Let me play a quick example of what this technology does, okay?
This is going to be a wrap up. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
So here you hear this sound that is, it's not a sound that the bass drum can do, but in fact it can, because we vibrate the instrument in a specific way. And then you will notice that when the performer changes the gesture, the sound will change. So now this is one thing that you can do, but the other thing that you can do that's pretty interesting for me is what I call remote control. So what you can do, you can play an instrument inside another instrument, and then playing back the second instrument inside the first one. So basically making a feedback loop between the instruments. Let me give you an example of that. So here I play a bass drum inside a metal plate. The metal plate is played inside a tam-tam. The tam-tam is played inside the piano, and the piano is played back inside the bass drum. So when I change the instrument I change the timbre. So basically, you see, these sounds are impossible. They do not belong to the instrument, to the physical instrument, but they are a byproduct of the fact that the instruments are connected physically using these technologies. So I composed a number of pieces, including larger pieces within a larger space, and this is an active project. I have the new upcoming project, the pieces that need to be played in May in Italy in 2022 in May. So just to wrap up, I would say that this type of work that put together mathematics, music, and computer science is a type of collaborative research that can really help in promoting inclusion, equity, and diversity. And the intersection of this mathematical modeling, creative computing is very rich and can bring together different communities. And as a side note, I would say that scientific thinking and artistic thinking actually share a lot of things, and they are basically two sides of the same coin. I would stop here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. All right, yeah, if you want to briefly unmute yourself and clap, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, Carmine. That was beautiful. So many questions. So please, I'm gonna keep note of them until the very end, and we'll ask after our second presentation. But yes, keep them coming through the chat. All right, I'm going to briefly go on and move on to our second presentation. I'm going to pass it on to Alexander to introduce our second presenter.
Great. Thank you very much. That was, I feel quite privileged to have listened to what's now been described as an impossible sound. So that was quite exciting. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to introduce to all of us Haein Kang, who is a multidisciplinary artist using advanced technology to explore the infinite possibilities of artistic expression. She intends to surprise us with the novelty and beauty of her work. Recently, she's working on a non-invasive brain-computer interface for artistic applications. Kang began her artistic career by winning the grand prize in the installation art competition held by the San Francisco Arts Commission in 2002. She has solo and curated group exhibitions in various venues in Korea and the United States, including Soma Museum, Seoul Museum of Art, Southern Exposure Gallery, Gallery for Culture, ISEA, ICMC, and more. In her application process for her upcoming residency at the Jurassic program, she said about her own research that, quote, "I was excited that the direct human-machine communication is possible by detecting electric potentials from the scalp. And at the same time, I was frustrated by the ambiguity of the physiological signals. In the process of dealing with the obscurity, the slight electrophysiological signal has brought many questions to my mind. Why does the brain generate the electric signal? Is this related to our mental process? How much can current technology prove this electrophysiological phenomenon? I can't wait to find out. So Haein, over to you.
Thank you for a nice introduction. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for having me to the Y Exchange. So I'm an artist working at the intersection of art, science, and technology. I think technological advances have been instrumental in opening up new creative avenues for artists. And I'm interested in expanding our awareness of the arts by developing artistic application of new technology. So today I'd like to introduce my work, Illusion, which explores artistic illusions using brain-computer interfaces. Okay, to me, the art creation process is simple: envision and embody. So to envision means to see something in the mind, and the illusion, the image we draw in our minds, is not something we see through perceptual experience, but something we know through accumulated memory. That's artistic illusion to me. So in this piece, there was a motivation. I'm living in Seattle now, and it rains in the winter. And then in the early morning, I could hear gently tapping roofs, like raindrop sounds in my studio. And then I tried to represent the sounds mechanically. So I built a machine. That was the beginning. So I don't know, you can see me, or can you see me?
Yep. Yeah. That's awesome.
So can you see this machine? Yeah, so I built that one. That's the beginning. And then this one has rudimentary arm stick, and then it's working by stepper motor, and then can get signal wirelessly, which my each headset sent. And then each arm has 2 or 3 weights like this. So it's tapping some materials and then creates some sound like this. So to me, it was kind of mechanical manifestation of raindropping sounds. And I want to add some variation to the sounds. So I applied one-dimensional cellular automata algorithm to the machines. The machine is kind of automated percussion instruments. And then it had 8 modules of them. So I applied 8 cellular algorithm, because to make the sounds more rhythmically or more like raindrop kind of sounds. So that was the beginning. And then I didn't know how to connect the brain-computer interface to this instrument. So I had to research a lot, the neuroscience and then brain-computer interfaces. And, you know, as you all know, the brain-computer interface is a direct communication channel in between the brain and the machine. So using our brain waves, we can control machine directly. So that's why it's fascinating. And you know, the EEG is kind of physiological signal. So as long as we are alive, we can detect the signals. But the problem is I want to extract kind of meaningful signals. So I want to connect or select some, I don't know what, you know, what kind of thinking or what kind of consciousness can occur, what kind of brainwaves. That was the matter to me. So, and yeah, so main question was does the brain waves, EEG, reflect our mind? Was the biggest question to me. And to find an answer wasn't that easy. And then I found a clue from an article from David Chalmers. He's a philosopher, contemporary philosopher, and also cognitive scientist. And then he suggested divided easy problem of consciousness and hard problem of consciousness. And like, let me ask you a question, like, when you see the color red, how do you feel in your mind? What's coming to your mind? Like, can somebody answer?
I feel stressed.
It's not calming,
Yeah, so
not calm. It
Yeah,
feels like I feel like it's very hot and maybe borders on some anger or something like that.
yeah, there are now 17 people in online, and then someone remind stressful memory, and then someone remind some hot feeling, or someone probably remind a rules, or someone probably imagine some country's flag, or it's all different. So it's kind of subjective things of our consciousness or our minds. So that we cannot measure, or we cannot compare that kind of things. So it's called qualia of our consciousness. And then this one impossible to checking or explain by science or by numbers. So what we can do with brain-computer interfaces, we can work with easy problems of consciousness. That means we can prove with current neuroscience. So these 6 things are David Chalmers suggested. And then I tested 3 of them. Somehow it's working fine with brain-computer interfaces. So ability to discriminate, categorize, and react to environmental stimuli, like from light or sounds, we react something that somehow we can detect by EEG, from EEG. Or focus of attention, or deliberate control of behavior. That's somehow available. But it's a little bit tricky. Focus of attention and then deliberate control of behavior somehow connected each other. But anyway, so it's working. Other 3 things I haven't tried yet. So let's skip this one. And then that's kind of configuration of my brain-computer interfaces system. So collecting each data with each headset, and then extract some meaningful signal from the each data, and then control the instrument, and then let the machine play the music. So that's it. And then what's meaningful data to me? Like, you know, to me, the illusion was somehow connect with our memory. And then I start from raindrop sound memory. So when I close my eyes, I made the machine start to play. And when I open my eyes, and then the machine stop playing and then keep silent. So when we close our eyes or just block the visual stimuli, like usually light, when we block the light, somehow alpha frequency wave appear in our visual cortex that's located in the posterior area of our brain. So it's called posterior dominant alpha rhythm, or in neuroscience, they call PDR in short. So I extract PDR from the brain waves. And then the location is very important. So alpha frequencies in between 8 to 13 hertz could detect from here, 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 and then everywhere. But when I block my visual stimuli, which appear visual cortex is the right one. Like for an example, if I detect the alpha frequency, the same one, in these areas, the side one, that's mainly about motor cortex. There are motor cortex, so that's about limbs movement. So that's different one. So that's how. So when you work with BCI, where the region of the cortex important. So that's the way. And then may you've seen the homunculus, the cortical homunculus figures. You know, the sensitive area of our body use larger area of our cortex. So that's why related on vision or hands movements easier than other area, because we rely on to our vision more than 70%. So it takes larger area of our cortex and then clearer than other senses, actually. I tried to detect auditory sensors that's located here, but because of the control, a little bit deeper side of the cortex, so hard to detect with my each headset. So I heard there is a special EEG sensor, which is really little tiny, so you can put into your ears. And then with that device, I heard more effectively you can detect auditory sensors. But so anyways, like this. So that's the one thing. So I connect the neuroscientific fact, like posterior dominant rhythm, and then the kind of sound sculpture or percussion instrument which I made, and then using brain-computer interface technology, I made all the connection and then create this artwork. So let's see the video.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, if we go into gallery view, we can all applaud. Thank you so much. That was lovely. And if people want to turn the cameras on, we can start engaging in our Q&A. Awesome. Lovely presentations today. I want to start with some of the questions that we have in the chat, and I'll call people to ask them themselves so that we can make this interactive. So the first question comes from Ezra to Carmine. Is Ezra here? There you are. Hey, it's nice to see you again. Previous Y exchange speaker. Hey. I can't hear you. No sound. Maybe type. There you go. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, I had it in the chat. How do you say it? Is it Carmine?
Carmine.
Carmine. Great name. Great presentation. I liked a lot. The very beginning of your presentation.
Hard to hear.
Yeah, it's hard to hear you.
Yeah.
You gotta get closer.
The
Yeah.
very beginning of your presentation, you said we can visit you or visit Ian and Matt.
Yes, so CENMAT is a facility that is associated with the music department at the University of California in Berkeley, and it's a place full of people working on different type of projects, and then we can organize visits, so we show what we do. This means both physical instruments or objects that people build, or performances. There is a season of concerts and talks that takes place during the academic semester, and we have concerts at night, like usually at 8, and talks that we call the open labs. So we have open labs in which people that are currently at CENMAT show what they do. So there is a website, cenmat.berkeley.edu, and I encourage you to visit the website, and then there is all the information for this type of things and events.
Cool. And I'll also put it in an email after this talk as well. I think that will help.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good call on Zach. Zach, you asked a question to Carmine as well.
Carmine, can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Good. I actually have a second question that goes kind of with my first question. You talked about musical questions, mathematical questions and musical questions. And I'm wondering if you can give us an example of a simple musical question, like 1 + 1 = what would be a simple mathematical question, and what the answer would look like and why. And then the second question is there a mathematical question that can be solved using music? So an example of that, the way that some mathematical questions have been solved for making sculptures or making drawings, for example.
Okay. I hear an alarm. Is that okay? Okay. So thank you for the question. So yes, for the first question, I would like to discuss this example. Suppose you want to determine when two sounds are close perceptually. So suppose you have 3 sounds and you want to say which sound is close to the other ones. Like, sound A is close to sound B or to sound C. And it turns out that is a very complicated question, because we don't have a model for timbre, so we cannot really compute a distance in the timbre space. So in other words, the approach that mathematically you can do is that to design a space, a multidimensional space, in which one timbre will be 1 point, and then you define a function that is measuring the distance between 2 points in this multidimensional space. That's what happens in Orchidea when Orchidea tries to find a combination of orchestral instruments that is close to that sound that you are using as a target. But so the problem is that it's basically the mathematical model is called inner product spaces, where you use spaces of features and you compute some sort of similarity measures between these objects in the space. But the problem is that perception is kind of tricky, as you may know. So sometimes something that is mathematically close is perceptually far away. And so the whole game here is to find a good, reasonable mathematical answer to a question that is somehow ill-posed or not really completely defined. That would be one example. Regarding the second question, is can we use music to model to solve mathematical problems? And then I will not give you a real example of a solution, but I will provide an interesting metaphor. So you may know what is the Riemann conjecture. The Riemann conjecture is a very known and difficult mathematical problem that deals with the distribution of prime numbers. And so somehow there is a conjecture that the numbers have a kind of a regular structure in a specific space, again, in sort of a feature space. So it turns out that the law that predicts the position of prime numbers is a musical law, is the harmonic series. But instead of using real numbers, it uses complex numbers, where the one part of this formula is 1/2. So basically, in other words, it's very close to what I would use to describe the sound of a piano, for example. So the sound of a piano is a harmonic sound that follows this kind of physical law called the harmonic series. And in fact, the distribution of primes following the Riemann conjectures is a harmonic series of a complex number. So that's kind of an interesting analogy for me between these two kind of very different words.
Thank
I hope I
you.
answered your questions.
It's great. I read an article about prime numbers. I'm going to put it in the chat if anybody, it goes over some of what you just said. So if anybody wants to read it, it's fine. I'm going to pass it to, we're going to jump around to the questions here. Wei, do you want to ask it?
Oh yeah, Haein, I'm very curious about I noticed that when you performing, you're very still, and I'm interested in the brainwave you were able to measure. Were you able to get let's see the alpha wave? Were you able to get the gradual change of alpha wave or the characteristic alpha wave? Were you able to? Are we using the alpha wave to trigger the actions, or you were able to use it to control, I noticed you have a different instrument there, like modulate the different instrument.
Like in my system, I detect alpha waves in the visual cortex area.
Yeah.
And then I use the alpha wave as a switch. So it triggered the algorithm, the sound systems algorithm. So it starts the cellular automata algorithm, and then let the instrument play 8 modules at the same time. But the algorithm determine which one will play or not from alpha wave directly. So that's just an on and off switch. My brain on and off switch. And then 8 module play a little bit differently, every steps differently by one-dimensional cellular automata algorithm. A little
Thank
bit
you.
but
can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this question might be addressed to both of you, Haein and Carmine. And this has to do with synesthesia that came to my mind, like in Vasily Kandinsky, where he heard sound, he saw color. And so, and it's not that many people who have this condition. And so what I wanted to ask, is it, for example, Carmine, when you hear about the synesthesia, do you think that it's the opposite, like we have art and music? So art is a discipline, and then we have a music discipline, and how it relates. And then, yeah, basically what's happening there and how would you interpret it?
It's a very good question to me. Can I answer first?
Sure.
Because I'm using alpha waves like PDR, the switch visual image to sound image. I mean soundscape and illusion, soundscape and illusion. So when I close my eyes, I see something in my mind through sounds. But when I open my eyes, I can see with my eyes, but I cannot listen sound. So I use the synesthesia kind of things to the piece, but not Kandinsky kind of synesthesia. As I know, Kandinsky was born with that talent, so he really can see some color from the sound. I heard there are such a people. I'm not that kind of people, unfortunately, but through the machine or the system, I try to convert, imagine in my mind some visual image through sounds, and then opposite way, I hear some sounds from the image. That was the original concept. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Anything will make sense to me. Yeah, Carmine, can you answer that question, how he interpreted sound and color, and what was high note, what was low note?
Sure. I'm not sure I can answer the question, but I can tell you somehow, I was mentioning this fact that, for example, when I compose or when I, create music, I think in sound. I use this expression, meaning that in my mind, I have this kind of sounds that I hear internally, and I connect them, and I will organize in time, so to speak. But I would say that we usually, maybe we think, I don't know, I was used to think that thoughts are object of the mind, but now I believe that thoughts are object of the body. So when I think that I hear with sounds, and I think it's I experience the sound as a physical experience, and basically I think this is a kind of a unified experience where I use my body and my mind to create through sound. So I'm not sure I can answer your question, but it's kind of a way of connecting to reality through sound. In fact, just I don't know if it makes any sense to anybody else than me, but I kind of developed somehow this technique that I call sonic grounding, and is when you try to connect to the sounds that you produce with your body by just being alive. And so, knowing these sounds is a very important experience for me, because you kind of connect with the physical and mental experience, and this kind of what I need to do to be creative. I need to ground with my sound somehow. That's something that I do, and I have a practice, that I am still developing. That I'm not sure I actually. It's not really formalized for the moment, but somehow this is related to what you asked, I suppose.
So I have another question that deals with the minds of the two of you. What happens in dreams? What do you see? What do you hear? Or have you studied this phenomenon?
Maybe I can go first, Haein, okay? So to me, that's really clear. I hear sounds. That's very simple. Like I hear orchestras. I hear the sounds, and most often than not, when I wake up, I don't remember anything than the sounds. So I don't remember the images. I remember the sounds. So that's pretty clear to me. So I don't know if it's kind of a byproduct of the activity of my brain when I'm awake or something, but in a sense, this is in fact, it's so powerful that sometimes I wake up because of a sound that I want to retain and remember somehow. That's something that happens to me.
That's interesting. And can you answer?
Some, like, about my dream, I'm somehow like different from Carmine. That's why I'm more close to visual artist or sound artist, still using sounds, but in between, more close to visual art. My working process in vision and in body, rather than I try to listen like something in my mind in illusion, but my illusion more close to visual illusion. And then in my dream also, I see like all natural colors, but barely listen sounds. So So my internal introspective experience, like consciousness, is about mainly vision.
If nobody has a question, I have one more question for me.
I think it was Alex.
Alex, you're muted.
Okay, yeah. So, and it's
I was trying
actually
to interrupt.
very much related to what to that question, except instead of thinking of dreams, what I was wondering, especially when Carmen mentioned that he hears these sounds when he's creating it. The question to Carmen is, do you also have a visual image when you're creating them, or is it purely audio? And of course, to Haein, what do you see or hear, or how do you, when you're creating something, how is the idea flowing through your body? I really like the Carmen's thought that it's in your body. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's a lot of physicalization in these questions because we're very physical movers in this space also. So just wanted to put that out there.
So maybe can I answer the question about the visuals they have? So you remember I showed this picture, this drawing of the project of the piece. Well, these are images, but are images of the sound. In fact, when you see the sound after the recording, this looks like the sound that I imagined in my mind. So I would say these are the same object somehow, right? That's what I see. That's what I think, and that's what I see.
Cool. And Haein, did you want to say anything about that? It's okay. You don't have to.
It's like like it's not the answer about the Alex question, but I want to mention a little bit about the things like brainwave is kind of physical things, but our thought or consciousness isn't. It's non-physical things. So, like, to me, brain-computer interface is kind of one method to approach to our consciousness scientifically. So that's why I'm interested in the technology. But the fact, as we all know, we don't know how our brain creates thought. Like simple thought even. Like, I don't know how I get an idea to make some things by myself. Just happen to me. But to work with brain-computer interface, and then that means to me, I wanna detect or monitor our consciousness or my consciousness, but current physics or science, we cannot explain exactly how. Somehow we try to explain, but simple things probably we can. But the complexity of the our thought, we cannot explain exactly how our brains or neurons create that kind of things, non-physical things. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question from Tamlin. Do you want to ask it? Is Tamlin here? I'll ask it if not. Tamlin asks to Carmine, do you have any advice for composers looking to start incorporating mathematical concepts into their music? We got some interest.
Yes. Don't do that. That's my advice.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a wasp nest, so to speak. Like, no, I'm joking. I guess it's a need, right? So I don't do that because it's fun. I mean, it is, but I need that. Like, this is the way my brain works. This is a need that I have to be creative. So I use a mathematical model, and then I somehow play with it, and that helps me to be creative. So I would say, if you need that, somehow. That's a kind of an advice. Then technically what you can do is indeed try to connect to a community of people that practice these connection between mathematics and music. And then, my advice would be, so in Europe, there are a few groups that do that. Like I know less about the US. I moved to the US like just 3 years ago, so I know less the scene. But so somehow in Europe, there are groups such as the one I was at Haein Kang, where this idea of using mathematics for being creative is a very kind of practiced one. So I think maybe to try to follow the events and the talks and the concerts would give you some sort of sense of what you could do and how you could connect these two kind of disciplines in a way.
Thanks. And maybe, yeah, if you have a link for that, I'll send it over.
Sure, yeah,
And
definitely.
Ed, I see your hand raised.
Yeah. Hi there. I have a question for Haein. I'm curious to know if you've ever slept with the cap on.
No, I didn't. Like, I'm using OpenBCI system, and then I 3D print it, and then it's really hard material, so I cannot sleep. But just at the beginning, I tried to find a certain pattern from my everyday life. So I was living on the headset all day long.
Okay.
So I have experienced just before fell asleep in drowsy situation. I want to record that data. So that much I have experienced, but I never slept with the Edge headset.
You might have peace. I mean.
But I know while sleeping, checking EEG research is pretty much developed, and then you can find very meaningful papers already about that part.
Right. Okay, well, thanks.
Don, you also had a question for Haein about proficiency. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, so it seems to me like for a more traditional instrument, the performer envisions some kind of sound that they're trying to produce, and then through like their proficiency of the instrument, they produce a sound that's more or less like what they want. And I'm curious with the EEG device you made, whether you have that feeling. Do you have some control over what you're producing? And then related to that, like if so, was that a thing that you learned, that over time you were more able to feel that you could control what your instrument did?
That's a good question. Like, I mean, when I have a performance, I do practice like a pianist or violinist. So similar, because it's kind of biorhythm. So similar time, similar lightness, I practice regularly. And then I can control it more better than without anything. So, and then I really have to get into or concentrate on or focus on that situation. So actually, I train by myself, simplify all the things, because while performing, if I think something different one, and then I lost the control power. I cannot control. So twice I performed many times, but twice didn't work well. Once after the premiere in the gallery, I made kind of private performance for my referees for my dissertation. I was so nervous, it didn't work. Such a shame, but it's the same condition. It worked well for 1.5 hours before, but a week later, I was so nervous, and then maybe that's interrupt some things. Didn't work well. So yeah, after 30 minutes, my advisor, calm down. We will wait. We can wait. Don't worry. And then start working. And the second time, I performed in San Francisco a couple of years ago in at the lobby of GitHub during the Kodam events. The first evening, the lobby was so huge, and then very crowded. So I couldn't listen my instrument sounds. So I couldn't get into the situation by myself. So probably 5 to 10 minutes working, and then I lost my concentration. And then so twice didn't work well. So somehow it's kind of biofeedback system. So I tried to enclose the system and then simplify. I just tried to communicate with my instrument. So when it start to sound, and then when I listen the kind of regular but little bit changed sound, so I get into the system, I feel become a part of the machine and then work better. So doesn't
Thank you. Yeah,
And I
thank
just
you.
want to say we have a lot of questions actually that are coming up. We're at the end of the time. We could stay a little longer, perhaps, if we want to answer one more question. But I did put links to some upcoming events for kinetic arts. So stay tuned by visiting our website. We also have April 1st, a screening of some work we've done recently with UC Berkeley. Wei, did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah. Well, check if you can, it's open. It's on Friday 12:30 to 2 premiere at the Berkeley Film Museum. You can check on the link. If you can go there, at least watch the trailer. It's really, really fun. There's the two pieces. One piece by Lisa and Sheldon. Lisa is the, I think, chair of Berkeley Dance Theater Department. And Sheldon, I think, was chair of Muse College Dance Department. They did the piece, and Diane and I, we direct another piece as a fun piece. Check it out.
Cool, thank you, Wei. So we're at time. If you do want to ask, should we ask one last question? Are people okay with that for both of the artists?
Quick question will be probably a simple answer.
Very simple answer.
Okay, the question is for Carmine, and it's about what is the role of conductor in your pieces? I have a feeling that maybe you have eliminated the conductor.
Sorry.
Well, I'll never admit that, but no. Well, it depends. It depends on the project. These projects where you saw these augmented instruments around the audience, these are definitely without conductor, because this really needs a sort of physical embedding in the place, and so the performers need to connect to each other. So there's not a time for mediation, by another person. But for the pieces with the orchestra, for example, more often than not, the conductor is needed because of the size of the group. So in that case, there is kind of a mediation. So what happens is that I try to connect with the conductor beforehand and try to communicate the ideas and the principles that I applied in composing the piece, and see if these can be transferred to the performance in some sense.
So not every conductor can work with you.
Yeah, it really depends on a number of things, like how much time do you have to work together, and then the interest of a person, each other person's domains. Somehow there are conductors that are maybe more into another type of music, and they don't really care about the strategies and the principle behind the composition, and other conductors are more interested in that, and so they kind of try to transfer these ideas to the performance. So it really depends on basically on the situation, I would say.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It was a burning question.
Great. I put some links in the chat so you can see the artists, their websites, so you can connect with them there. And I will follow up with some links of all the things that we saw today. I just want to thank everyone for showing up, and applause, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned for the next one in April. Tell your friends. We always love this event. It's such an enriching experience for us. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bravo.
Good night, everyone.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.